Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naishtaki. Reading from Shrimadbhagavatam, Canto 7, text 48. Is it? 47. Okay. Mani Gautami Pati Devata Gautami Pati Devata Yataham Mrita Vatsarta Yataham Mrita Vatsarta Rodimi Ashru Mukhi Muhu Rodimi Ashru Mukhi Muhu Marod Gautami Pati Devata Yataham Rita Vatsarta Mukhi Muhu Rama. Do not, Rodit, make cry. Asya is, Janani, mother. Gautami, the wife of Drona. Pati Devata is dead. Artha, distressed. Rodimi, crying. Ashru Pati Devata Yataham Mrita Vatsarta Rodimi Ashru Mukhi Muhu. Translation and purport. Cry like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. Jai Shishyagan like me. I am aggrieved for the death of my sons. She need not cry constantly like me. Purport by His Divine Grace Abhay Charanadam and the Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sympathetic, good. So you know the story, right? So the real mother was aggrieved so much. She said, "No, you can have the baby. Let her." 6th canto that I'm reading now is an explanation of how the Manus are given the ability to police. Now, I highly suspect, because they come out of different openings of the body. So I highly suspect that the forms that they come contained in the one release. So if the body is containing enough for there to be many releases, but we don't have this kind of love for those seeds. And what is happening with the male, he regards the momentary feeling of pleasure that he gets from the release of these seeds as more important in the act, using the act as a means of pleasure, than the act that he's taking part in to produce the pleasure he will experience for the moment becomes to him more important than the which produces 1 or 2 or 3 or up to 8 or so. Still is losing millions. Still losing millions. So, souls that are brought to this understanding then, they are given eventually the ability to be able to perform that function. When the universes are empty, there needs to be a means of producing offspring much more rapidly than what we are doing now. And this all makes sense as well. So, this is how one father can give birth to, I said the other day 1,000 children, but it was actually 10,000. I went back and read it again because I thought, geez, 1,000 seems like a lot. But no, it was 10,000. for heaven's sakes, 10,000 children that Narad Muni had convinced to become householders. And I find it very strange and peculiar that the very same analogy or simile that Narad Muni makes of the material world can be said of the spiritual world. He tells these sons, again, of Prajapati Daksha, who is Prajapati Daksha for the sake of, he has the ability to produce thousands of sons, right? Well, he produced 10,000 sons, and Narad Muni says, your father is wanting you to take married life, but you can't do that until you have gained full knowledge, intelligence. You have to know about the hole in which whoever enters into that hole, they never come back again. And there's a man in that hole. And the description he goes on to give them leads them all to conclude that they should take up brahmachari life. So here again, Daksha has, for the purpose of inhabiting the universe, he's brought forth all this progeny, and now here Narad Muni comes along again and puts into the minds of his sons that they should be brahmacharis. But the same analogy he gives about this hole, that whoever's entering into it doesn't come out, can be looked at as the material universe. But then, as Krishna's promise is, those who chant the holy names are promised that they will return to the spiritual realm and never return again. So see, this is how. And there are, the description given about the material universe itself is samsara, which is described as an endless cycle that's going on. Now, how I can relate this to this verse is that how difficult it is to become a human being. Look outside, all the greenery. Every bit of that greenery is producing seed after seed after seed after seed. And most of them not even having the potential, the ability, they have the potential, but not the ability to come, to fructify and manifest. It will die in the ground because it's not having enough ground or whatever to hold on to the feet or whatever they need. Most of them will die or be plucked out as weeds, right? These little trees. So these little forms of energy are the same forms of energy that we once were in. We were once trees ourselves to come to this state of being. And how many times did we have to become a tree seed to even get manifest as a tree? All these principles of Krishna consciousness elevate the human being who's reading about it, their appreciation for the human form, for the fact that we do have a human body. So even though we look at all these forms of life as being potential human beings, we nevertheless see the big gap there is between human being and animal. But human beings can make it not such a big gap by their consciousness. If they live as animals, the next time around, they gain this form of life by going through a natural process and somehow coming in contact with the human being, for the human being to be in their consciousness at the time of rebirth, going through the cycle. So when an animal, a creature dies with his master in his mind, then it gives him the function of being able to eventually become human. So if human beings, when they are bringing children into the world, the same process is going on. The consciousness of the living being who is holding the seed, he's holding seeds in a way that are all having likenesses that he has. But due to the fact in this Kali Yuga that we are all born with demonic tendencies. In such a yuga, there's only one being on the whole planet born with a demonic tendency. And that means everybody on the planet is using the energies of their bodies' functions to perform in such a yuga meditation. And that's all that's required of them in that age. And one would think, well, how in the world are they going to eat? How in the world are they going to do functions of the world? As the world is telling us, so many necessities are there. But they live off the air. And the environment created. My argument to all of us is, we can create that environment in a healing little box. We make these healing boxes that people who are sick, they climb in, they sit in that box for an hour or two, they come out refreshed and they have breathed in such life. Because these plants are made by their exhalation, they provide us inhalation. And that's what Krishna did in the beginning. So this is revealing an aspect of lowest forms of life, these plants, yet giving us the sustenance. Where would we be without the production of oxygen by these plants? We would have to live and learn how to live without oxygen. Is that possible? We don't see forms of life in that way. But you know what this chanting will bring us to? Dhruva Maharaj didn't need oxygen at one point. At the age of 7 years old, what was he, 5 years old? He's climbing on the lap of his father. And by the jealousy his mother created in his mind, because he's already born into a Kshatriya family. Yet, his mother telling him, you can't sit in your father's lap. You have to take birth from my womb before you can sit in your father's lap. Well, this struck him so heartily that he decided he's going to go, by advice of his mother, he ran to his mother asking her if this was true. She said, by good advice, she said, the only way you can overcome this and fulfill your desires is by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by praying to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And when he heard that from his mother, Narad Muni took pleasure in Dhruva Maharaj's mentality that he was going out into the forest to do as his mother had suggested. And when Narad Muni saw this, he actually gave Dhruva Maharaj the mantras that would enable him to do exactly what he was hoping for. And when he did that long enough, it's explained that after chanting this mantra, first one he gave him was one of Krishna's most favorite mantras, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudeva. He chanted that, I think it was like for 30 days or something. And what is called it's when you own something, right? So it is the perfection of the mantra. There is a benediction given, which he was simply chanting with a pure heart. And this is the qualification for receiving the benediction of the mantra. And he was able, by the benediction of that mantra, to see demigods coming and going to this planet. Now, today, that might be very restricted, because it is explained that physically coming here, they don't want to do that any more than they want to go to the bathroom. They wouldn't even come here to stop to pass stool. They consider this place so much. The environmental conditions now created by the present civilizations are so degraded as compared to what they were 5,000 years ago. So, if we, as an organization with this as a history in our full knowledge, can't create that kind of an environment by our own lack and weakness of not wanting to search out what that environment has. And Bhagavatam explains all the plants that were in the environment, for example, of the city of Ayodhya. All these plants are described. Of course, some of them may not even be available now. And this has a great extent to do without mankind realizing it. Health is in the breath of life as well. So there is a big upheaval of people not wanting there to be exhaust fumes and things of this nature. But with that as well, carbon dioxide is absorbed by the trees. And so everything that we do destructively in that way, burning and all, this becomes their inhaling. So they do well, which is why they could outlive the human race. There is no sin enacted to the trees in that form they are, because that form they are put in is a form of punishment. They want to be naked in front of everybody. You get to be a tree like that. So there are so many, and see, these kinds of desires lay the same way our abilities lay kind of dormant, just waiting for us to mature to the point that they can be, as it says in the Bible, that the Mother Earth herself is groaning and travailing like a woman waiting to give birth, to the day that the sons and daughters of God will make manifest in the earth. But see, if we read through any of these books as just normal, having just philosophical conclusions to use with their minds, we miss out on the deepness of the application of the meanings. So, taking that into its application, I don't even remember what was it I had made a statement of from the Bible.
You talking about Solomon, the baby, the last reference?
Yeah, well, that was another reference. But, irregardless, we get into the environmental, the control of the environment. It's explained that when devotees chant Hare Krishna, Krishna brings the rain at the specified times. Now you look into the history given about the way the world originally functioned. There was a time before rain was needed, that everybody, all the plants were given moisture from the waters that came up from beneath the ground. And as scientists know now, there are rivers flowing under the earth, inside the earth. And there are also rivers of lava flowing. And I don't know but that whether this is a state necessarily that the earth is put into during times of peaceful arrangement in which the earth is completely satisfied. These upheavals, just like the fault, the San Andreas fault, It's a big opening in the earth that has to be repaired for there to be a highway there. Goes across it every week. They have to bring out and fill it in, the whole gap that's there. But these are said to be plates that are shifting under the earth. And then when they come out of the earth, you can see at the end of that San Andreas Fault a huge formation of rock whose layers are going up and down like this, as if it was at one time in a different position. And it is right now fighting the forces of other rocks that are also out of place. So these upheavals in the earth take place. They could be natural. But with Bhagavatam describing the earth as having a body in which the vegetation of the earth is described as its hairs. So when mankind I'm proof of it, we have beauticians, and we have barbers. I'm the son of a beautician and a barber. So see, not one hair out of place. But see, the earth is also having need to be cared for. I was talking last time we gave class about the necessity. Fruit trees are made because they have to be taken care of. They're made for man's use, but with the responsibility of taking care for them, otherwise they die. So it's what we would call a symbiotic relationship. You take care of me, I take care of you, and we both live happily ever after. So similarly in the earth, this is just by my own experience and what it appears to be the possibility of. Because when I'm going by histories of Krishna's presence on the earth and the way the earth is described as being when he's there, what he did is, in the form of Kapila Dev, in all the earth at that time, there were as well high places and low places. But it is said, in the body he had, he could do this to the entire planet. He took all the high places, which were mountains, and brought them down, and he filled in all the valleys. He made the earth smooth. And the way it's described, it suggests once again that it was once of that nature. So now, also included, Vishvakarma was born very early on, with this about the same time Narad Muni and Prajapati Daksha and these. And he is an architect of the universe. So there is a time when every structure that is built on the planet is built in accordance with geological designs given for that particular purpose. But now, because of false ego, everybody has their own idea of what kind of building they want to make. And everybody's thinking theirs is the perfect one, and it's a little better than their neighbors too. So we get back to the false ego, and it's always related to the false ego. We see here Mother Draupadi is in such a position that if she was controlled by the false ego, immediately she would be calling for, cut his head off, throw it down in the gutter, to satisfy her own desire for revenge, now bitter animosity, but she's not revealing that at all. She's revealing the same kind of love she is in her normal everyday activities, because she feels this way towards all living entities all the time. She doesn't want anybody to die or suffer. What to speak of a mother? What to speak of a mother who is the wife of their teacher, their brahmacharya. So love can't, in one way, it can't be hidden because of its own brightness, because of its own nature. But then in the other sense, the only way it can be seen is if those who are in its presence are looking for it. Because people read the Bible for all kinds of justification to do all kinds of things, when the Bible also describes it as a means to find love of God. The New Testament does. The Old Testament, you might see God from a different light, because the concept of God being love, not really there in the Old Testament. And the New Testament describes the dispensation given to that particular group of people in that particular era as that of the law, it was called. The dispensation of the law. And then it is describing the coming of the one looked at in their prophecies as the Savior or the Messiah who would come, who hasn't yet completed his work, I might add. That, what was he going to bring? Would be a new age. Oh, mercy. That's what it was. That he would bring mercy. And this mercy was eventually to reveal to mankind love of God. Right? That this new idea that he was bringing to the race of Israel was that some teachings that Moses had given them that required death, adultery, for example, required death by the law Moses had given. They would, if a woman was found guilty of having a relationship with a man other than her husband, and if I'm not mistaken, vice versa, but usually it very much leaned towards the favor of the woman. It was mostly patriarchal society, as far, with the exception possibly of some societies in Egypt, matriarchal societies. But for the most part, societies in history have been patriarchal, run by the male, because the male form has been predominantly the stronger of the two, which I see the cause of women having rebelled from that, and also giving power to the idea that philosophy is more powerful, the word, the teaching, the writing is more powerful than the enemy's weaponry, their physical weaponry. But I saw women rebelling in that womanhood was not respected by man. And she had no protection other than the man once she surrendered to the position women were put into in married life. They had to stay home and cook and clean the house and take care of the kids and do the shopping. These kinds of things, yeah. So women rebelled to being thought of as a man's object for his pleasure. After he gets off work, then she's got to take care of all of his wants and desires, make him happy. Then they said, well, I can go to work too and be the breadwinner. And now what has happened in society with that mentality, which is, as well I could say, because of man's false ego and wanting to overpower the circumstance, not giving women the existence rights and privileges that he is having with God, and looking at her from that way, from his own false ego, then her own false ego rises up and say, well, I want to be the man. So then we have a situation created in society by such both egos, functioning, non-functioning, now demanding of both that they have to work almost. Isn't that? You see a lot of people now, the woman and the man goes out and the nanny stays at home to take care of their kids. Or even without, their kids are being brought up by the public school system anyways. Which is why Srila Prabhupada called public school system the slaughterhouse. And see, a lot of these, they put fences around to keep them in. It's all, even, guards on the windows to keep them in. It's like a prison house, almost. But in the state of Vaishnav society, the boys are trained by the guru. They don't even see girls till they're grown of age, 13, 14, maybe 15, 16, 17, even 18, 19, 20 years old, before they reach the stage making the decision whether they want to be a householder and bring children into the world, or whether they want to continue a life of brahmachari life, which Narad Muni is suggesting. Because see, this life not being the only life there is, and to believe there are better positions than this in the universe, for qualification for some positions that are available in the universe, it requires more than one life of perfection here, or in a similar set of circumstances. It said, to occupy the seat of Brahma requires 100 births in Vedic culture. 100 births. Be born into a family that is practicing Vedic culture 100 times like that. So we can see the position that Lord Brahma is in, for example, with, in effect, being simultaneously the ruler, but subservient nevertheless, because Indra is taking the position of ruler of the heavenly planets. Lord Brahma has a position more or less just to glorify Krishna. Now, there is a soul described in the Bible having 4 heads. And he is described as only using those heads to glorify God. But every 4-headed person that we have seen of Brahma, that I have seen of Brahma, is 4 human heads. The 4 heads seen by John, who was given the vision that he wrote down into the book called the Book of Revelation. And he saw one having the head of, I believe it was a bear, the head of a lion, and he may have had the head of a lamb and an eagle as well, a man and an eagle. So these 4 heads. And then it can be analyzed that these 4 heads similarly can represent nations. So the reason that is because, well, Brahma himself, by consciousness, is putting things in order for human beings to know what order is. Basically, before the universe even as human beings in it, order is established, and right and wrong and all these things. So we have writings that are said to come into existence, say 5,000 years ago. It doesn't mean that they began then. So for a devotee, when somebody says, how old are you? Well, I'm just as eternal as you are. We're all eternal. We have been all existing since time, since before time. There is no time. There was no. The only knowledge of time in the spiritual world is described as its absence. Time is made evident by its absence in the spiritual world. But then Krishna says, time I am. But he's saying that of his presence here in the material world, which is that factor that wears everything down, which is wearing everything out. Age, old age, disease, and ultimately death. The place we are dwelling in, Murtyaloka, the place where death is dwelling. But our consciousness is not in Murtyaloka. Our consciousness is in Vaikuntha. And then we just stay there. And the chanting enables us to do that. The activities we engage in Krishna's service enable us to do that. The distributing of prasadam, the distributing of books, the speaking of Bhagavatam, the inviting people to the temple, giving out little pamphlets, all these little activities, cleaning up the grounds, cutting the grass, all these little things, making garlands for Krishna. They're all activities made by Krishna specifically for devotees to get the knowledge of eternity and what the taste of an eternal activity can be like. And so, in the temple here, we have access to so many that all we have to do is ask authorities, what can I do as a regular service in Krishna consciousness that might be pleasing to Krishna? And they'll give you something. What happens generally in the beginning is something that may not in our own nature be thought of as that which we would think of ourselves as able to excel in, or think of ourselves as something to be proud of. But the fact that it's related to Krishna helps us realize, by taking part in these activities that seem to be subservient to other human beings, helps to break the false ego, helps to develop character, and helps to see us all ourselves as equal participants and all having equal value. When we can see a fly landing on the deity form of Krishna, and Srila Prabhupada saying right now that fly has as much value there being there as the pujari who is offering the fan to keep the fly off. It's kind of like Krishna would have no battle if there weren't any enemies. And the more difficult the enemies are to fight, the more it glorifies him and his ability to overcome them. So it's kind of this is how, because death is not in Krishna's mind the same way it is in a human being's mind. It's just a changing of clothing for the soul, putting on a different kind of clothes. So, if we have we might get the idea, well, if all human beings want to be celibate, then eventually there won't be any more human beings. But by natural maturity, by again being born more than into one existence and one form, we can then take eventually birth as manus, or those that would. But that, as high and elevated position as it would be, is still contained within the universe. And we want to get totally out of this universe altogether. There's no birth there, there's no death there. There is only eternal singing and glorification of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and all of his activities, which is what these songs are as well. There's room for anyone to come here all day long. You can sit here and chant, sing Krishna's names. We have song books. Nicest thing if you know the melodies that are originally given by them. And so many activities, all that Krishna has made for us to be able to engage in, engaging our minds fully all day long. Are there any comments, any questions, any realizations? See if you can come as close to the microphone as possible. Maybe yours is. You're gonna put this on?
Yeah, I was going
Okay.
to send it to me.
Yeah.
Like it posted.
Yeah. So you can talk right into your mic.
Oh, yeah, I heard it. They don't have no problem, but, the New Testament, just like everything else, the folk tales, the allegorical, and the plagiarisms, the New Testament comes from the teachings of Ananias. So the teaching of the Menimope is about a scribe by the name of Ani. And Ani comes before Amen for his day of Christianity judgment.
Is this Egyptian?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when I was listening to you speaking about the woman, how all ideologies studiously remove their voice. And the reason why they do that, I learned in Egyptology, it's called the Making Creed. The woman has a direct link with the Creator, naturally. As men, we say the intuition, but it's called the Making Creed. So by removing their voice, that keeps them away from their relationship. And they know that's why every religion, every culture states that the woman is not supposed to be able to speak and not supposed to be able to preach, all that type of stuff.
Let me ask what you mean by removing their voice. Is that not giving them any say-so in government, not giving them
like
any...
me and you, we familiar with Christianity.
Yeah.
So it states that a woman is not supposed to be a preacher,
Yeah.
but they still are.
Yeah,
It's a prime example.
yeah.
You know, that's not the word of God, that's the word of man.
Right, but you know, as well, there are accounts, the book of Sarah, for example, of women who had taken the place, and they look at Joan of Arc as well. At times in history, according to time and circumstance, gender, because according to the Vedas, we are all in position of subservience to the Supreme, makes that one Supreme being the real only male.
Exactly.
And so we're all in a subservient position to that. But when we are born with male figures, there are certain responsibilities expected by society as compared to, and sometimes, what Krishna is asking of us. And so what Krishna is asking of males and females can be the same identical kinds of activities. It doesn't have to be restricted to what they think they can do because they're male. A man can, sew clothing for Krishna. A man can make a garland. A man can sing. A man can dance. So many things. John. Nice comment, Lou. Thank you very much. Any other comments or questions, realizations? Shrimadbhagavatam, Shrimadbhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada.